Give us a little more background. Tell us about Michael Melerine.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me this morning. Sure. My wife and I live here in Shreveport with our young son, Foster. Stacy grew up in the Houghton area, went to Airline High School. We met when we were living down in Baton Rouge working. After that, we moved back up here. When we were looking at where we were going to set roots, things like that, one of the things that we talked about was, all right, we're going to have kids eventually if we get married, hopefully. What are we going to do? Where are we going to send our kids to school? What are those things that we can look for? So even back then, going 6-7 years ago, when we were determining where we were going to move and where we were going to lead our lives, education was at the top.
Somebody who decides they're going to run for office to dedicate what little time, in your case, being an attorney and a family man, what little extra time you have, if you want to give that time up, in this case, to run for BESE, you've got to be doing it because you think things are kind of messed up. Is that an unfair conclusion?
So,
I mean, you got to be, in my mind, if I were going to run for something, I'd have to be irritated, angry enough to go, I'm going to do something about that.
Exactly. Look, to say it's 100% broken and it's not salvageable, I don't agree with that. I think over the past few years, there have been some improvements and some steps forward, but we need to continue that. We need to take what is working and expand it, and we need to take what's not working, set it aside, and start over.
Okay.
What's not working?
Yeah.
So right now,
I was going to say pick one. What is, what's not?
Yeah. So right now, let me start with what isn't. If you look at our literacy rates for children in schools right now, we're at the bottom in every single metric almost. Why that is important is because if you look at private prisons, by the time a kid is in third grade, they take literacy rates of kids in third grades, and they're able at that point to extrapolate out how many beds a private prison is going to need going forward. That right there tells you everything you need to know. If a kid is not literate and on or close to grade reading level when they're in third grade, there's a very good chance that going forward in their life, they're going to have problems. Now, those problems don't just stay with them. Those problems become problems for the state because we have to incarcerate them if in that situation, or chances are they're going to end up on some sort of social safety net. The problems aren't restricted to education. Now, it starts with education.
Let me ask you about that, because early childhood education has been one of the staples of our new superintendent, Dr. Brumley. What do you propose Louisiana needs to do a better job at early childhood education?
So I believe that the best way to do it would be to have a family, to have what you consider a traditional family and do it that way. But the reality is that can't happen, and that does not happen in every situation. Whether it's because a mom's working 2 jobs and when she comes home she just can't take the time because she's exhausted, or whether it's any other number of circumstances that you have. So what the state has to do is try to help people in that situation. By no means am I saying every single kid has to go to school from the time they're 1 year old, because if you've got a kid out in Coshada or one of these other rural parishes or something like that, a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old shouldn't be on a bus for an hour each way just to get an education. What the state can do is something that they've started doing with the CSAP programs, which is giving them money. If you're working and you're doing everything society tells you to, giving those parents a little bit more money to send them to a private daycare or a private institution where they can, get a little bit better education there. If that's not possible in your situation, the state has, or like you said, Dr. Brumley started setting forth guidelines. Let's do this. Let's start expanding, looking into ways to doing it. And I think we need to empower Dr. Brumley to do that and work with him, see what his things are. Look, the first shot's not going to work.
You sound like you're for vouchers, big time.
Yes.
But there are those who disagree, who say it hurts public education. Explain why you are for vouchers.
Yes. So at the very basic core of my beliefs, I believe that we need to do what's best for the children. Now, whether that is a public education, a private education, homeschooling, whatever it is, at the end of the day, the question needs to be, and the goal should be, whatever we can do to help as many children in Louisiana succeed. Now, if that's a voucher, that may work. Up here, it may not work, and it may work down in South Louisiana. Same thing with charter schools. Charter schools, if you look in DeSoto and Bossier, they don't have any. The reason why is they have very good public education. You don't necessarily have to sacrifice one in order to achieve the other. It's finding what works in a community. This district is 10 parishes. What works in Bossier is not going to work in Vernon. What works in Caddo is not going to work in DeSoto. You've got to find what we can do to help that parish, those kids, and give them the best opportunity to succeed in life, because the investment starts in education when they're little and goes through life.
It sounds to me, not only based on what you're saying, but some of the some of the people that you are associated with, that you are a small and local government kind of guy. Is being a member of a state board like BESE, do you think the other members, do you think the bureaucracy might stand in the way of some of the things you might want to do in terms of returning to local power for local schools?
Bureaucracy is always going to be an issue. You have to find ways, though. We can't just throw our hands up and say, hey, look, this is how it is.
It's too big, it's too hard.
You can't. You can change it. You can make the changes within BESE, and you can empower the local school districts and the local leaders by doing that. You could change laws. You could change regulations. Now, some of it comes from the legislature, and you have to have a good working relationship with the legislature when you're on BESE, because where ours being BESE, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, kind of empowerment ends and where theirs begins, sometimes those lines are grayed. It's not a clear delineation at all points. So we need to have a good working relationship with them. And together, we can take that power back and put it to local schools and to parents, most importantly.
Time for one more there, kid.
I want to talk to you about teacher pay and accountability. Do you think our teachers make enough? And if not, where do you propose to get the money to pay them more?
Yeah. So Dr. Brumley has started to talk about this. He started to put forth kind of rough ideas about how we can improve teacher pay. If you look at what he did in DeSoto and what he did in Jefferson Parish when he was down there, he's kind of set a framework for what he wants to do. I think to answer your question where that money could come from, that money is in the Department of Education budget already. We just need to sit down, look, figure out where in the budget we can take that money and we can move it to a teacher pay situation.
Okay. Let me ask you, too, about the high school track. A lot of people say we need to restructure our high schools so that our children are not all on this track to go to college, because they're not all going to go.
I 100% agree. I think the greatest disservice that was done to my generation, and to give or take a few years, is our parents were taught the only way for your child to succeed is if they go to college. That's not the case. What they've done recently is they took the Jump Start program, which was what you were talking about, and they've expanded it. They've kind of set forth 3 tracks. One of them, if you want to go to college, let's try to get you as many college credits and be as far along in college as we can go. That way you can finish early, use some of that TOPS to go do something else, further education if you want. There's the Jump Start program, which seeks to allow someone to get out of school with an associate's degree. That way they can jump in, have that associate's degree, start making a good paying wage. And then the third one is basically an apprenticeship program. Let's do that. What that does is a welder, auto mechanic. BESE over here has got a great auto mechanics program. They don't have enough students. If we can get our teachers and our counselors and school administrators to show kids you can get out of school making nearly $100,000 being an auto mechanic, it kind of gives somebody hope that otherwise may be struggling in school. Hey, look, if I can just get through this and I can get into that program and I'm really good at working with my hands or something like that, that gives a kid a hope, and it helps our society and helps the state of Louisiana.